8. Thomas Rondell. 20-year-old Theodore Conrad finished his shift at a Cleveland bank one day in 1969 and left with $215,000 in stolen cash. He disappeared and cut ties with almost everyone in his life, including his family. Conrad's friends remembered him saying that it would be easy to steal money from his workplace. He was also a huge fan of a movie about a bank robber called The Thomas Crown Affair. But nobody suspected that he was seriously planning to rob a bank, much less disappear. A nationwide manhunt ensued, and the case received widespread coverage, appearing on popular shows like Unsolved Mysteries and America's Most Wanted. Hundreds of tips came in, but none led to Conrad's capture. U.S. Marshal Pete Elliott followed in his father's footsteps and took over the search for Conrad when his dad retired. By then, Conrad had been missing for over 30 years, but Elliott was determined to find him. In 2021, he discovered that Conrad had spent most of his 52 years on the run, living in Massachusetts under the name Thomas Rondell. He lived an ordinary but comfortable life as a married father and a car salesman, and he was well liked in his community. Rondell died shortly before his true identity was discovered, and he took the secret to the grave without even telling his wife or kids. Elliott declined to reveal how he tracked the fugitive down, but was glad to finally put the mystery to rest. Everyone who knew Conrad as a gentle and polite man named Thomas Rondell were shocked by the news and would have never imagined that he was a wanted criminal in one of the longest-running unsolved bank heists in U.S. history. 7. Laura Whitehurst. Laura Whitehurst was a 28-year-old teacher for the Redlands Unified School District in California when she began a year-long affair with one of her students in 2012. She became pregnant and gave birth in 2013 with the baby's father in attendance. A month later, she was finally arrested for the illicit relationship. In a lawsuit against the school district, the victim accused school officials of knowing about the affair and failing to report it, despite being required by law to do so. According to his lawyer, a picture of the young man with Whitehurst in her birthing suit circulated among staff, but nobody reported it to the police until 6 weeks later. In fact, the student's mother was the first person to alert the authorities. The district denied doing anything wrong and maintained its innocence, but agreed to pay $6 million to the victim to avoid the possibility of a bigger settlement. Further investigation revealed that Whitehurst had inappropriate relationships with at least 2 other students, dating as far back as 2007. She took a plea deal and served 6 months of a 1-year prison sentence, and shares custody of her child with a father, who's now legally an adult. The fact that Whitehurst got away with years of misconduct only added to existing doubts that school officials were unaware of her crimes. At the very least, many believed that there was enough evidence to warrant an investigation much sooner, and demanded changes in how the district handles these types of cases. 6. Barney Harris. Residents in Monroe, North Carolina were shocked to hear about the death of a beloved local high school teacher in 2021. They were even more surprised to learn that it happened during a botched attempt to rob a drug cartel. A respected community member who taught Spanish and coached men's varsity basketball and track was found dead in a mobile home in Alamance County, about a 2-hour drive from where he lived. The married father of 3 was wearing a bulletproof vest that had failed to protect him from being fatally shot. Another victim, identified as an alleged drug runner for the Sinaloa cartel named Alonzo Beltran Lara, was found shot in the head twice, execution style, with his hands and feet bound. Alamance County Sheriff Terry Johnson likened the crime scene to an Old Western shootout. The property was littered with dozens of bullet casings, and 3 nearby trailers had also been shot. According to Johnson, Harris and his brother-in-law, Stephen Alexander Stewart Jr., spent considerable time following cartel members around in an attempt to figure out where they keep large sums of cash. Their efforts led them to Alamance County, which is a known hotspot among the state's drug trafficking routes. While there's no way of knowing exactly how the deadly confrontation went down, detectives believe Harris and Stewart went inside the trailer when Alonzo Lara wasn't there and waited for him to return, or that Lara returned unexpectedly while the robbery was in progress. Video evidence led investigators to Stewart's home, where they found evidence tied to the scene. He was charged with first-degree murder and armed robbery, and is being held without bond. Authorities also arrested Garyon Dead Wes Stepney as the alleged gunman who shot Harris. Monroe residents were understandably shocked to learn that a pillar of their community led a double life. As a member of law enforcement, Sheriff Johnson was less surprised, stating in an ABC 11 interview that many times you don't really know a person, and this is probably one of those examples. 5. Hector Cabrera Fuentes. Hector Cabrera Fuentes was a prominent microbiologist who lived a double life. He had a wife and a family in Mexico, and another wife and 2 daughters in Russia. In 2019, the Russian government refused to let his second wife leave the country, prompting Fuentes to visit Moscow. A Russian intelligence agent approached him and offered to help resolve the issues that were preventing his family from leaving Russia. Fuentes was tasked with traveling to Miami and tracking down the vehicle of a federal informant who provided details about Russian intelligence to the U.S. government. He drove to the person's apartment complex with his Mexican wife, who took a photo of the informant's license plate for the Russian agent. At the agent's request, he rented an apartment at the complex under the informant. Fuentes was detained at the airport while attempting to leave the U.S. for his home in Mexico when a customs agent discovered the license plate photo in his phone. He admitted to working for Russian intelligence and was charged accordingly. In 2022, Fuentes pleaded guilty to acting in the U.S. on behalf of a foreign government without notifying the Attorney General and was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. At his sentencing, Fuentes said he had zero interest in getting involved in anything like that from now on, and that freedom and family come first. It's probably safe to assume that the case and the international press coverage it received also affected his marriages and personal life, but the press hasn't touched on those details. 4. Nicholas Alaverdian. Nicholas Alaverdian projected the image of a child advocate who used his experiences growing up in foster care to campaign for change. But his track record tells a much different story. Over a 12-year period starting in 2007, Alaverdian was accused of assaulting several women, including ex-wives and girlfriends, as well as women he had no romantic connections to. He also allegedly swindled at least 2 victims out of large sums of cash. It took a while for authorities to catch up with Alaverdian. In 2020, the FBI accused him of stealing the identity of his former foster parents, who filed a complaint in Ohio claiming that Alaverdian racked up $200,000 of debt in their name. Shortly after the allegations came to light, Alaverdian claimed he was suffering from cancer. The following month, an obituary appeared in the local press, stating that he had lost his battle against the disease. Believing that Alaverdian had faked his death and went on the run, authorities continued to investigate, and an international warrant was issued for his arrest. In 2021, they found him living in Glasgow, Scotland, under the name Arthur Knight. At the time, Alaverdian was hospitalized with COVID-19 and was on a ventilator. He fought extradition for months while claiming that he was the victim of mistaken identity. But a Scottish court concluded that they have the correct suspect in custody. Extradition hearings are scheduled to begin in March of 2023. 3. Philip Cesarigo. In 2000, a man calling himself Tom Carew published a book about his service in the British military called Jihad: The Secret War in Afghanistan. In it, he claimed he was a member of the elite and highly secretive Special Air Service. The book became a bestseller after the 9/11 World Trade Center attacks in 2001. But it wasn't long before a former member of the SAS contacted the BBC and exposed Tom Caro as a fraud named Philip Cesarigo, who served in the British military for 2 years but had failed to get into the SAS. The tipster also said that Cesarigo spent a little time in Afghanistan, but that the book's account of his experience there was not based on reality. BBC journalist George Aiken confronted Cesarigo during a live interview on national television. He denied being Caro and stormed off the set without explaining any of the discrepancies in his story, and took a swing at a cameraman on his way out. The book's publisher offered to remove parts of the story that were false or exaggerated, and its ghostwriter, Adrian Wheel, initially defended the content. But the media and the public responded with flat-out disapproval and disgust for Cesarigo's lies, and the book was taken off the shelves entirely. Even Cesarigo's daughter, Claire, wanted nothing to do with him after the scandal. In a 2002 interview with BBC reporters, she described her father as a fantasist who's trying to make money on the back of other people's reputations. She said that a lot of former SAS members had scores to settle with him, and that she wouldn't care if someone killed him because he brought all of his problems on himself. Cesarigo dropped out of the spotlight and moved to Belgium, where he spent his remaining years alone and poor. In 2008, his decomposed body was found in a rented garage he had been living in for several months. Many people immediately wondered if he had been murdered, but investigators concluded that Cesarigo most likely died from accidental carbon monoxide poisoning, bringing a quiet end to the 55-year-old's sad and scandalous life. 2. Daniel Palmer III. While conducting a welfare check at a Jackson County, West Virginia home in 2020, sheriff's deputies found 51-year-old Wanda Palmer slumped over and motionless on her living room sofa. It appeared like someone had brutally hacked her with a hatchet or a machete and left her for dead. Sheriff Ross Mellinger later told People magazine that Wanda's injuries were so horrific, he thought for sure that he was dealing with a murder case. But he quickly realized that she was still breathing, and emergency responders rushed her to the hospital, where she was put on life support. Investigators suspected that Wanda's brother, Daniel Palmer III, had something to do with the attack. It was a well-known fact around town that the siblings had a complicated relationship going back years. A witness claimed that they saw Daniel on Wanda's front porch on the day of the attack. But without enough evidence to implicate him or the ability to question Wanda about the crime, the case came to a standstill. Wanda remained unresponsive and was transferred to a long-term care facility. Against all odds, she woke up 2 years later. Her speech was very limited, according to Sheriff Mellinger, but she was coherent, and she implicated Daniel in the attack. Mellinger said Wanda's return to consciousness and her ability to communicate was about as rare as it gets from an investigative standpoint. Daniel was charged with attempted murder but died in custody a week later from natural causes. Mellinger told the press that Daniel had a lot of medical problems, and his health declined rapidly after his arrest. He said it was unfortunate that justice was never served in the case, but that law enforcement would turn their focus to supporting Wanda's recovery. 1. Denise Bolser. 24-year-old Denise Bolser disappeared from her home in Raymond, New Hampshire in 1985. Her estranged husband, who lived with her at the time, arrived home to find his truck missing, along with a note that said, "We've got your wife." The only evidence of Denise's departure were some footprints in the snow that soon melted. About a week later, her husband's truck was found abandoned at Logan Airport in Boston, Massachusetts. Denise's ID, social security card, and birth certificate were in the front seat. After failing to find evidence that she met with foul play, investigators began to suspect that Denise left New Hampshire on her own accord and started a new life with a new identity. But her family didn't believe she would ever do that. A few months after Denise vanished, her former employer accused her of embezzling somewhere between $12,000 and $100,000. She was charged in absentia, and the case only added to detectives' suspicions that she engineered her own disappearance. The case went cold until 2002, when a private investigator from Florida tipped authorities off to a woman named Denise James, who had the same birthday as Denise Bolser and lived in Panama City. She was awoken one morning to find police officers from New Hampshire and FBI agents at her door. Denise admitted to her real identity and said that she fled after her former boss threatened her life. She said that he was the one forcing her to embezzle money to cover some of his wife's debts. Before settling down in Florida, Denise lived in the Bahamas, California, South Carolina, and Hawaii. She eventually started a new family who knew nothing of her past, and she reunited with her loved ones from New Hampshire after she was found. Thanks for watching. Would you rather find out that your partner has a child they never told you about from a previous relationship, or that they have an ex who died under suspicious circumstances and never even mentioned it to you? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. See you soon. Bye.